America, it's time for some straight talk. You love your phone. Look at you. You hardly put it down. But you don't love that expensive wireless plan, do you? So what if I told you can keep that phone network and number 2 for a lot less? Well, this is me telling you. It's time to switch to Straight Talk, guys. Bring your own phone and get unlimited plans starting at just $45 a month on America's largest, most dependable 4G LTE networks. Straight Talk Wireless. Only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. Please refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Subscribe now by going to the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
It's Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. The show's presented by Progressive Insurance. Greeny's out today. Will Kane sitting in with Golick. All guests will be on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, which should include Charles Barkley.
Yes.
Who else we got today, Golick? Got Field Yates.
We have Adam Schefter, Sal Paolantonio covering the fight, the big fight this Saturday, McGregor and Mayweather, which seems to be taking some interesting turns. And Bickler, for those that listen to the show, Travis, we're going to call him Bickler on our staff, I'm going to find a new job for him today. Those on TV may see it. Those on radio, I'll just explain to you. There's a fly that's aggravating me. I showered, I'm clean, but there's a fly around me. So Bickler may have to stand by me and be the fly deterrent.
Okay.
Somehow either have the fly go toward him or have some sort of fly swatter type thing to get rid of said fly because it is in my face and in my grill.
I have no idea if Travis has a microphone over there at all, but I would love to know Travis's, a.k.a. Bickler's, educational background and history and all the moments in his life, the training that led to this crucial job.
Hey, Bickler, I see the fly.
It's on his
It's
coffee
on my
mug.
coffee cup.
Come.
It is in my coffee cup.
This is it.
This is your moment.
No, it's right here. Right
You're
here.
hitting me in the head. You're hitting me. You're nowhere near. Don't just shush it away. It's going to keep flying around me. You're going to have to make it expire, okay? I hate to say you're going to have to kill something, but the fly's got to go.
Mom and Dad are so proud right now, Travis.
Yeah, all that money spent on education. Get rid of the fly that's flying around Golick.
We got your back today, Golick. If it's not Travis, I'll try to reach over and swat that fly away.
I appreciate that very much.
But let's do this. Let's start with off the top.
Off the top.
The Dodgers beat the Pirates 6-5 in extra innings, thanks in large part to a Curtis Granderson grand slam, who also hit a grand slam in his final at-bat with the Mets Thursday. From Elias, Granderson is the first player in Major League Baseball history to hit a grand slam for 2 different teams over a 4-game span. But it wasn't all good news for the Dodgers. As the team announced post-game that Alex Wood could be headed to the DL with shoulder inflammation.
Yeah, that's bad. With already Kershaw just starting to throw, coming back. Alex Wood has been so dominant. The only one more dominant has been Kershaw. This is a team that everybody is. It's kind of like the Cubs going into the postseason. Oh, they're the favorite in the World Series. That's how it is for the Dodgers now. Yet your top 2 pitchers, have some issues going on. Puig does hit the go-ahead home run in the 12th inning, so good for he has 22 home runs this year. That's the same amount he's had the last 2 years combined. But you can make all the runs you want, but if you don't have your pitching all set up and lined up for the postseason, the Dodgers could be in a bit of trouble.
What a farewell and hello from Curtis Granderson.
Not bad at all.
Grand slam and your goodbye with the Mets. Grand slam not long after you arrive at the Dodgers to win a game.
2 different teams, 4-game span. The Dodgers, by the way, have 8 grand slams this season, 2 more than any other team, and tied for 3rd most in a season in franchise history.
Off the top.
Alabama's been named the preseason AP number 1. That was yesterday as it received 52 of 61 first-place votes. However, history is against the Tide winning it all. None of the previous 3 times that the Crimson Tide have been preseason number 1 under Nick Saban did it win the national championship, and that's not relegated just to Alabama. None of the previous 9 teams to receive at least 50 first-place votes in the preseason won it all.
Yeah, it's been somewhat ugly. We'll see what Bama does this year. The lowest of those 9, as you said, to have at least 50 was Alabama in 2010. They ended up finishing 10th that year. Second lowest, Alabama in 2013. They had 58 first-place votes, and they finished 7th that year. 1975, you have to go back to. Oklahoma was the last team with at least 50 first-place votes in preseason to finish the year. ranked number 1. So
1975.
Yeah, it's a long, long time ago. It's almost seems to be that curse to not only be ranked number 1, but have that many votes for you. And we'll see. They start out with a loaded Florida State team. I can't wait for that game in a couple of weeks. But, between Ohio State, other good teams out there as well, while we go in every year saying Alabama's a favorite, it wouldn't shock me at all, if they don't win it again this year, again, living up to the curse of being ranked number 1 and having over 50 first-place votes.
Not to overthink this, which I can just feel you coming back to me with that kind of criticism. Man, it tells us something about certainty. We're really sure 50 first-place votes and never get that right.
Not
Never.
one. 50 first-place votes. The AP poll is out. They had 52 votes to Alabama. Number 2, Ohio State had 3 votes. Number 3, Florida State had 4 votes. USC had 2 votes. They were number 4, and Clemson is number 5. So that's your top 5 in the AP poll.
Off the top.
With tickets starting in the thousands, Mayweather-McGregor is expected to break the record for the largest gate in Nevada combat sports history. $72 million for Mayweather-Pacquiao. Mayweather already holds 5 of the last 6 gates in Nevada combat sports history, with McGregor holding the top MMA gate in history at $17.7 million for UFC 205.
It's amazing. The top gate for Nevada history, Mayweather-Pacquiao, $72 million. Second, Mayweather-Alvarez, $20 million. What a monster difference. We know the build-up for that Pacquiao fight. We're getting the same thing for McGregor, where the odds have really – McGregor's not favored, but he was so far underdog. He was underdog almost as much as anybody going against the UConn women, which would be a pretty heavy underdog. But now that is really – the money has really gone McGregor's way. The odds have really dropped from that. Again, he's not favored, but – there's some interesting or legitimate concern, would you say, for Vegas if McGregor were to win this thing?
Yes, that one-punch potential knockout from McGregor has some casinos on the hook for something like $3 million. I think the betting ratio was at one time 50-1, dropped down to 25-1, meaning everybody's going in, little boxing knowledge, doesn't care, flying like, I'm just going to put a flyer on McGregor.
That's exactly right. I can make some buco bucks if I do that. I think you're going to lose your money. I don't think McGregor is going to win, but that's why we're all getting the fight, waiting for that one punch.
Off the top.
So the Denver Broncos have officially named Trevor Siemian as starting quarterback. Broncos coach Vance Joseph announced his decision at a news conference, naming Siemian the clear-cut winner. Interesting phrase there. Clear-cut winner in his competition with Paxton Lynch for the starting job. This is the quote from Vance Joseph. After a long battle, we've decided to go with Trevor Siemian as our quarterback. For the second summer in a row, Siemian has turned away challengers to be the starter. Last year, it was Lynch and Mark Sanchez. This year, Siemian and Lynch again were both in the running. Joseph and GM John Elway repeatedly called this an open competition, though, almost from the time Joseph was hired in January.
So it either talks about Siemian playing well or the competition that's been around him has been subpar. And if you're going to go down that road, remember, it's a first-round pick in Paxton Lynch. We have some other numbers to go with that don't bode well for Paxton Lynch. But give Siemian all the credit in the world. It's a 7th-round pick. This is a guy that wasn't counted on to be the quarterback of the future for anybody, but he's taken advantage, as you mentioned last year. Lynch was a rookie then, but Mark Sanchez was there, and this year it was just he and Paxton Lynch. He's taken advantage of his situation, put himself in a good position. Started 14 games last year. 18 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, I think 3,400 yards. I don't think he's ever going to be near the top of the pack of quarterbacks, but they need him to be serviceable. But on the other side of that, is this more a sign that the Denver Broncos are still in the market for their next future quarterback if you don't think Paxton Lynch is going to be that guy? We were ready to sell off Jared Goff. He was the number 1 pick in the draft.
You think we did that a little early?
Maybe, but the point is we were ready to sell him off as the number 1 pick. Paxton Lynch is going into his 2nd year now and can't beat out a 7th-rounder. So what could be said about that?
As you said, we got some ugly numbers on what that means for Paxton Lynch. We'll unpack a little bit later.
Off the top.
And last night, the Giants lost to the Browns 10-6 in preseason action. But more importantly, New York's top 2 receivers, Odell Beckham Jr. and Brandon Marshall, Beckham with an ankle, and Marshall with a shoulder, left with injuries. Beckham Jr. has averaged 95.9 receiving yards per game in his career, the highest mark over players' first 3 seasons in the NFL.
Well, I mean, listen, the bottom line is if that injury was anything devastating, when you first looked at it, you thought it was a knee, and then you were like, okay, it's an ankle. Okay, it's better ankle than a knee. Just make sure it's not anything torn or broken. And then if it's just a sprain, you hope it's not a high ankle sprain. You start going down the list of possible injuries and how long you could be out. He seems to think he'll be there for opening weekend. But this brings up a whole new set of questions. Overall, we can talk about the game and the Giants and their lack of running game and their troubles on the offensive line and their excellent defense on what they'll do in division, which I'm sure we'll get to. But I know the Twitter went crazy with the hit last night, so I know that's something we're going to get into and need to talk about.
Yeah, let's do that. But this has been
Off the Top.
Mike and Mike is presented by Progressive Insurance. Now you can test drive Snapshot to see how much you could save before switching to Progressive. Visit progressive.com/snapshot. So last night, as you said, there's this hit on Odell Beckham Jr. that sent Twitter ablaze. Is this dirty? Is it not dirty? How serious is it for Odell Beckham Jr.? By the way, Golick, when he went down and walked off the field, walked along the sidelines with no help, it didn't look that serious until he gets to the tunnel, and there's this image of him collapsing down onto his knees. And also, worth noting, no one around Odell Beckham Jr., all by himself.
Yeah, he took off for the lot. Well, to kind of set the picture if you didn't see it. Now, I have seen, Will, players walk off the field with a slight limp and have their ACL torn.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I have seen that.
Is that gritting it out toughness, or is that really can't feel it at the moment?
It could be a little bit of both. Just you don't want to believe it, so you're going to just get up and walk and say, I can walk. Adrenaline may take over at that point, but you're like, it's not hurt that bad. I can walk, and you walk, and you walk. And then as it wears, as adrenaline may wear off, you're going to start to feel the pain a little bit. But for Beckham, he just got up. He stayed on the field for a little bit, never laid down, just kind of squatted down, got up, walked off the field, and then basically just took off and jogged to the locker room. He got ahead of all the trainers and stuff up toward the locker room, and then obviously the camera followed him, and then he kind of went down on his knees right outside the locker room, and then a trainer got there, helped him up, and they went into the locker room. And I tweeted right away on it. To me, there was nothing wrong with the hit. It was it Brian Bodie Calhoun, I believe is his name, was the DB who hit him. On one of the first tweets I saw was from someone named Wheels, said, I'm sorry, but rather they go high and then after the knees, cut tackles need to be banned, go low, tackle, don't cut. Wheels, I don't know what to tell you. Do you see what's happening in the league? Do you know what's going on with head injuries and what the league is trying to do and take them out? If a player goes high, they are going to get flagged and they are going to get fined. And if they don't get flagged, that still doesn't mean they're not going to get fined. They can get fined after the fact when they watch the tape again. So DBs are going to go low. The game has taken them there. And we can all have a problem with that. I understand the correction to protect the head. I get it. You don't want headshots. You don't want a guy missiling. But I think to a point they've overcorrected. Maybe they felt they needed to with the more information about the head injuries, with the concussion lawsuit, whatever it may be, that they were throwing flags too quickly. Way too quickly. Wide receivers changing the levels on their own. A DB, aiming for the chest, and all of a sudden the wide receiver drops their head, and the DB gets flagged for that and gets fined for that. If I were a DB, I'd be scared to death on where to hit a guy. Scared to death on where to hit a guy. So they're going to go low. And that's a reason, because a wide receiver will change levels. So you may have the good intention of going midsection to chest, and that wide receiver drops his head. You make any contact with it, the flag comes out, and the fine comes out. We saw earlier in the game, Brandon Marshall on a sideline play reached out for a pass, didn't catch it, and Jabril Peppers, the rookie from Michigan, hit him, and they threw a flag. And I thought, I almost lost my flipping mind. And luckily, the refs got together, and a couple of them said, no. He used his shoulder, it went shoulder to shoulder, no head contact at all, and they picked up the flag, which was the right thing to do. But they're going to throw the flag, and the DBs know that. So this kid went low on Beckham. I don't blame him one bit. The rules are dictating that's where you need to hit these guys, and it's a shame because you ask wide receivers, and they'd rather you hit them high. We had Chris Collinsworth on. He'd say, hit me high all day. Don't hit me in the knees. Because what happens, Will, is the knees are that injury is right now. You blow a knee out, you're done. You know you're done for 12 months. and how it's been with guys. Now we're learning more is that they get stung in the head, they'll have a headache, they may have a concussion, but they'll be back in a week or two and playing. That was the mentality. That's what we're trying to change. We're trying to protect the head, protect the concussions, and protect that part of the body more. So this is the ancillary thing that happens because of it. You're going to go lower just to play it safe and to not get a flag or get fined.
Now, anybody that's played sports, anybody that's run for that matter, knows you feel incredibly insecure and vulnerable at the knee and ankle level.
Yeah, absolutely.
But ESPN NFL analyst and future Hall of Famer, a guy that knows a thing or two about playing defensive back in the NFL, Charles Woodson, agrees with your analysis on this hit. Listen.
For this guy, everybody's talking about should he be the highest paid player in the league.
He's about to get paid.
Out there in he's going to get paid. And all of a sudden you take a hit down low, which I would say is not a dirty hit. For one, I think the defender lost his footing. So I don't think he necessarily tried to hit him low. But you can't hit him high.
Right.
So where does the defender hit him?
So Golic, I hear everything you've just said. And I feel the predicament that a defensive back is in. If you go high, you get flagged for targeting. You get a serious penalty that costs your team and possibly costs you some money. Right. If you go middle and you try to take the time to really size up and get what you think might be a fair and legal, and because this hit's legal as well, I guess a hit that no one criticizes, right. You run the risk of one of the best players in the NFL with a little shoulder shimmy and move running for a touchdown, so you don't have time to say, hey, where's the exact right place to hit him? And you go low, and now you're in this situation. But here's my question for you. And it's honestly probably a better question for Charles Woodson because most of the time the guy you were hitting was 3 inches away from your head.
Right.
But how much time do you honestly
Split
have
second.
in most of these?
Split second. I mean, we get to see slow motion replay.
Right.
But you get a split second. You know that if you take his legs out, he's not getting yards after the catch. You know,
when you see this, you heard Woodson say that it looked like Calhoun lost his footing a little bit.
Right.
Do you think? And it doesn't just have to be in this situation. When DBs go low, that is a calculated decision to go that low?
Well, I think not. I think in the last couple of years, they're going lower than they normally would because they're playing it. Because as I said, his aiming point, if he slipped, his aiming point is probably now the hip to the midsection or the hip to the chest. Hit that guy in that area there. That's the spot. Hit him, wrap him up, tackle him. That's what you want to see, or drive your shoulder in there, one of the two.
That's what's happening in training camp. That's where defensive coordinators and position coaches are saying, when you come in, wrap up at the hip.
Well, there's two things. In training camp, rarely do you take anybody to the ground.
Right.
And number two, you're not hitting anybody low in training camp.
Right.
So that hit you saw there, even if, say he didn't slip and he was trying to go low and take the legs out, that's not happening in camp.
But my point about camp is where are the coaches saying
they want
hit them here?
They want you to hit you from the hip to the chest.
Okay.
Because and hit either with the shoulder or wrap with the arms and take them down. But as I said, in a game when it's split second and you know where you are on the field, if you're a DB, you know you're in position to make a play on the ball. If you're not, then you got to make sure if they catch it, you try and separate the man from the ball. And if they catch it, you try not to give him any yards after the catch. That's what's going through your mind in a split second. Can I make a play on the ball? Can I separate man from the ball? Make sure I tackle him and don't give him yards after the catch. Those are all decisions that are made basically in a split second. And over time, that's kind of what you do. So in camp, you're not hitting anybody low. In camp, you're rarely taking anybody down. Now, maybe when these teams are practicing with one another, like we see more and more of, maybe they have some live segments where they are taking people to the ground, but they're saying don't take anybody out at the legs. So this is now part of the game because you get in that game. That's what I said. Guys, I think it's helped that guys, have stopped missiling as much, leaving their feet, putting their head down. That definitely needs to be out of the game. That's dangerous. You got to flag that, fine that. I get it. So what happens is a DB will start to aim to the midsection to the chest, either with a shoulder or to wrap up and try and take a guy out that way. But as I said, a wide receiver catches the ball. He knows he's going to get hit, so he starts to curl. And when he curls, his head comes down. So now your aiming point of the midsection, now you catch part of the head because the wide receiver dropped his head. And the league is saying, hey, DB, that's on you. That's not on the receiver. Flag, probably a fine. So that's what the DBs are dealing with. It's as hard to play defensive back with the rules in the game now than any other position. You know,
essentially, you've got a hitting zone. You're trying to come in this hitting zone from shoulder to essentially thigh.
And forgetting that,
a guy dips his head into your hitting zone.
Into your hitting zone. And, oh, by the way, you can't touch a guy after 5 yards as well. Right. So in college, remember in college what they changed to, we always talk about quarterback differences. You can hit a guy all the way down the field in college, just as long as the ball's not in the air. There's no 5-yard chuck rule in college. You can be banging a guy 20 yards down the field as long as the ball's not in the air. You get to the pros, you got 5 yards, and that's it. And they call it more and more and more illegal contact downfield. So now you got to get your hands off of them, and then you got to go make a play on them, and you got to make a play in the specific area. That area gets crunched even more when the wide receiver dips his head. So it's tough. So they're saying, you know what, screw it, I'm going low. And sometimes that's going to lead to a gruesome-looking injury. And let me tell you, if Odell Beckham Jr. was done for the season, they're done for the season because they can't run the ball. They have trouble protecting Eli Manning. Their defense is excellent. It's like that's what's going to carry this team because the running game can't carry it. And then you have Odell Beckham, who was in the top 2 or 3 of best receivers in the league.
Mike and Mike is presented by Progressive Insurance. We mentioned it earlier. Here's our guest list for today. Field Yates at 6:30, Charles Barkley at 7:30, Adam Schefter at 8:30, and Sal Palantonio, who I don't know if he's already in Vegas, but he's focused on Mayweather-McGregor at 9:30. All phone guests will be on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. If you miss any of those guests, you can listen to all 4 hours of Mike and Mike on demand in the ESPN app. You just pointed it out. John Gruden last night pointed it out. This team is about those receivers. And Odell Beckham Jr. wasn't the only one to sustain an injury last night. Brandon Marshall had a tweak of his shoulder as well. Listen to Gruden quickly last night.
I can't imagine him carefully. I mean, this guy's 26% of your entire offensive output. They're going to use a lot of caution with Odell Beckham, obviously. They need to get Brandon Marshall on the field because he needs to learn this offense. This is a timing, rhythm offense, something that's new to Marshall. From my understanding, it hasn't been easy for him. He had 1 catch for 2 yards tonight. He didn't have a great season last year, but he needs time on the grass with Eli Manning. Sterling Shepard came back from his ankle injury. This is a no-huddle offense. This is an offense that relies on hand signals, a lot of nonverbal communication. They can't afford to not have any of these guys on the field together. It's very important.
Not a great year for Marshall last year with the Jets. 2 years ago, he had a nice year for them. This one, it was a sideline pass. He didn't make the catch. A lot of people think he short-armed it. I'm not worried about Brandon Marshall and catching the ball and toughness. That's going to be fine. Give Jabril Peppers a lot of credit. Came over and popped him really good. That's where Marshall hurt his shoulder. So it looks like he'll be all right as well. But that's without question going to be the strength of that. Eli Manning may throw the ball 800 times this year. I mean, it may be just a ridiculous number.
Here's Louis Riddick from last night. He tweeted, Eli is going to set a career high in pass attempts in 17. # run game stinks again.
Yep.
I just can't imagine we're at a point here where a team is actually building around their wide receivers. I thought we'd move on from that.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Time for a SportsCenter update. Odell Beckham Jr. was injured last night in the Giants' preseason game against the Browns. He was diagnosed with an ankle sprain. He suffered the injury in the second quarter last night. The Dodgers beat the Patriots.
Patriots.
You know what happened is your fly is right here.
The fly,
your
I'm
fly
telling you,
right there.
Bickler is not doing his job.
And my eyes darted over.
Yeah, I know.
If the Dodgers beat the Patriots, we got to stop this showdown.
Yeah, we do.
What happened?
You're right. Belichick could be sick.
Dodgers beat the Pirates 6-5 in 12 innings. Alex Wood faces a possible DL stint after being removed with shoulder inflammation. And finally, the Little League World Series continues today. Coverage begins at 11 a.m. Eastern on ESPN. Travis, if I'm going to be a professional and sit in for Greeny, I'm going to need this fly removed.
Yep. Thank you very much. There you go. That SportsCenter is brought to you by Discover Card. They alert you if they find your Social Security number on any one of thousands of risky websites. It's free for card members. Just sign up online at discover.com/free alerts. Limitations do apply. It's aggravating, isn't it?
It is. It's distracting.
You were mocking me when I first opened with that, weren't you?
Thinking you were being a little
See,
soft,
and now what happened? You got the Dodgers beating the Patriots. Way to go. Good job, pro.
Hey, wait, before you get to tweets. Here, speaking of soft. You thought I was coming to you. You thought I was coming to you, Field.
Well, what is that?
No, joining us now in studio, by the way, is Field Yates, and that wasn't my reference about soft.
That's a segue to me.
Wow,
Where are you going with that one, Will?
Off.
Will is not afraid to stoke the flame, as you know, around here in these ESPN parts.
That's very true.
Didn't really
I'm tired of you not listening to me.
There we go.
My turn. My turn.
Yeah, see, listen, Will, no stranger to
I was
the people going
away in Colorado when that went on, from what I understand, that you tried to invoke if you yell it and talk louder, you may be more right, like I have lived the last 18 years.
Oh, Golick. I invoked that thing. Last Friday, for those listening that might not know what we're talking about, I lost my temper a little bit.
Uh-huh.
On first
Will
day.
went viral. So what happened?
Did I?
You went viral.
Yeah, I heard I was trending.
Maybe a little later we'll talk about why that was, and I'll jump in on that maybe and see if I can rally you up again, or if I agree with you, one of the two.
Wait. Before we get to football with Field here, I want to ask you a question. Because speaking of soft,
Yep.
I had this debate yesterday when I was filling in on the Ryan Russillo show. Straws. Soft, yes?
Straws.
A man should not be drinking out of a straw.
With a couple of exceptions, right? Like you put together a good workout, go maybe treat yourself to a protein shake, like from a smoothie or a smoothie bar. One of those two exceptions I think are reasonable, but I don't use a straw when I'm drinking a soda or having a drink at a bar.
My drink of choice, not of alcohol, is like me and my wife enjoy unsweetened iced tea. Mm-hmm. I never use a straw. I don't use a straw for water, tea, soda, anything.
It's because you're a man.
Well, so we're going that far? Otherwise? We're going that far that if a guy uses a straw, he's not a man?
I don't think we're going that far. I think it just is that far.
You think?
And
wow.
we're calling it like it is. I think, Field, you've nailed it. I mean, there's a few exceptions that include milkshakes and protein shakes.
Yeah, I would agree
Anything
with
with a
Not that I
consistency
spend
like
a lot of time drinking protein shakes, obviously. However, I do like a milkshake. During the summer, spend a day at the pool, maybe
because everyone knows when you're drinking a milkshake, you're safely in the man zone anyway.
Yeah, of course.
I think as long as you
the 8-year-old man zone.
There, you're all right. I think I'm with you on that. The straw thing. I can't remember the last time I used a straw.
Little cocktail at the bar, drinking out of the cocktail straw.
No, not happening.
Doesn't work.
You stir it, you toss it.
All right, Field Chase is brought to us by DraftKings. Try daily fantasy for free at DraftKings. Use code Mike now at DraftKings.com. Field, you tweeted this last night, and we just talked about this before you came on the show. Here's your tweet from last night. The Giants roster is primed to compete at so many spots, but Eric Flowers' liability cannot be overlooked. Major issues. How do we have a team that many are saying is definitely a playoff team? I don't know if anybody's going so far as to say Super Bowl contender, but as we pointed out, is built around the skill position, built around wide receivers with a major weakness at the offensive line.
Well, I would say this. I tell people this all the time, is if there is one thing that coaches, scouts, people around the NFL come to me with unsolicited, it is just how poor the offensive line play is in the league right now. And there are a lot of reasons. We don't have the time to get into all of them, but one of them is just that the way that college offenses are playing right now, these players are simply not trained to play at the NFL level as rookies or youngsters. But Eric Flowers entered the NFL with all the athletic tools you need to play as an offensive tackle. He was somewhat perceived as overdrafted, but the other school of thought is that if you have a guy that you think could be a starter for you right away at a critical spot, you got to use him. The Giants, as I mentioned, they are loaded. They've got perhaps the best defense in football. That is not such a crazy statement to make. The offense, as you mentioned, loaded at wide receiver. The running game is perhaps inept, but that might be more because the offensive line has had some struggles. Eric Flowers, and people got on me and saying that wasn't his fault, the Myles Garrett sack. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it was his fault or wasn't his fault. He has been a struggling player for them for over a year now, and that first half last night showed to me that he's going to continue to be an issue. And the passing game can be great if you have a running game and an offensive line that can help balance it out. But if you can't run the football, you become predictable, and when you become predictable, that means defenses can actually account for you. To me, it's a critical weakness for the Giants.
Listen, when I talk after the draft and I talk about players that I don't think should have been picked where they were, it's not like I enjoy talking about somebody who I don't think is as good as what other people think. But I said this exactly about Eric Flowers when he was drafted, that I didn't understand it. I didn't see it in college. And then you're going to make him play one of the most important positions on the field, left tackle. I shook my head at it, but I'm going to go even further and say, let's not just put it on Eric Flowers. Their whole line struggles. John Gruden mentioned it before. The right guard and right tackle, Hart and Jerry, struggle with stunts. What happened early in the game? A stunt by the Browns and a sack. I mean, they are struggling mightily. If you can't run the ball, it is not on one guy, though Eric Flowers is struggling, and a lot is on him because he was a first-round draft pick.
That fly get your mouth?
Fly?
This thing is pest fly.
Fly attack?
The fly. It is on that entire offensive line from a pass protection standpoint and a run protection. As far as early running, when the ones are against the ones, Perkins was the running back for the Giants. This says it all. He had a long run. His longest run was 16 yards. Sounds pretty good, right? Of his 6 carries, one of them was for 16 yards. He finished the day with 6 carries for 10 yards.
Yeah.
That means he lost 6 yards in his other 5 carries. He's tackled behind the line of scrimmage. So while Flowers is struggling, and I think struggling mightily, that whole O-line is struggling. And that is why it's very difficult for me to – and I know they had a good record last year, and their running was bad last year. So – it's one of the reasons they're going to stay in this division race. We're going to see what happens with the Cowboys, how long they're going to miss Zeke. Does Dak go through the sophomore slump, as they say? Because I don't know if the Eagles, maybe Washington, we'll see what they go through with Cousins and some of the new wide receivers and Terrell Pryor. But we talk about the O-line. The O-line was sexy talk last year. Right. I mean, it was the Cowboys, it was the Raiders, it's the Titans, It's Washington. It's these lines that you got to build these lines, and that's something the Giants just haven't done well. And they've tried. Pugh's a first-rounder. Flowers is a first-rounder. I mean, they brought in some free agents. They just haven't found the right combination.
Well, maybe you just answered my question then, because it's certainly not all on Ereck Flowers. This would be my question for both of you. I would put this on team management, team construction, general managing as well, because in a league now where the New England Patriots have won consistently over the years with not investing a ton in wide receiver. I mean, there's been the Randy Moss years, and now they've got Brandon Cooks, but there have been years when they've had guys on the field playing integral roles that were not sexy draft picks or free agent signings. Also a league where, as you point out, Golic, the Cowboys and the Raiders are defining success through the offensive line. How did the Giants get to a place where their major investment seems to be at the wide receiver position? It's counter to everything else going on in the league.
Well, I'd say this, is that they had some strokes of genius in getting to this point. I mean, taking Odell Beckham Jr. and drafting arguably the best wide receiver in football at the slot that they did, which was 11th or 12th in that year's draft back in 2014. I mean, that right there is a masterstroke. $1.8 million for a cornerstone of your franchise this season is unbelievable. I don't know that I put this really on Jerry Reese and the front office of the New York Giants. I think this might be – epidemic's a strong word when we're talking about a lack of players at a position, but the offensive line problem in the NFL is real. I mean, you talked about the Patriots and the Cowboys. Let's just use them as good examples of how – teams have gone about it differently, and it's worked out magnificently. The Cowboys have a bunch of first-round picks. They've got Zach Martin, the standout guard from Notre Dame. Travis Frederick, who everybody said, what are you guys doing taking Travis Frederick in the first round?
They were crushed for that.
Now he's the best center in football. Tyron Smith, left tackle, who moves like a linebacker. I mean, the guy's a freak. Lyle Collins probably would have been a first-round pick if he not had the issue just before the draft. So they've gone big, spend big, and they've got a ton of money invested in that. The Patriots have one first-round pick on their offensive line. It's left tackle Nate Solder. Then you're talking about a third-round guard, an undrafted center, a fifth-round right tackle, a right guard that's a fourth-round pick. So I think what it comes down to, the common thread for me, you got to have good players, but a good offensive line coach can do miracles for a line. Golic mentioned Washington, Bill Callahan, Dante Scarnecchia, for my money, the best offensive line coach in football, New England. That right there can really move the needle.
You also have to bring in, I put it on a lot of people, you got to bring in the players. You have a couple of first-rounders in Pugh and Flowers on that line, so you have to look at who you drafted. Then it falls down to how do you coach them. We said this about the Rams and quarterbacks. Bringing in quarterbacks, and were they worthy of high picks, and then is that coaching staff able to get them where they need to be? So I think that's the same thing you could look at any position. Were they worthy first-round picks, the offensive lineman guys or the Giants? And then if they weren't, so say they weren't first-round picks, maybe they were third-round picks, well, then you got to coach them up, because plenty of other teams, you just mentioned the Patriots, have third- and fourth-round picks at offensive line who get coached into and turn out to be excellent players. So even if they blew it taking guys in the first round, say they were third- or fourth-round picks, you still got to then coach them up. So I think it falls right on down the line to lay out the blame.
It's an excellent point. It completely and utterly destroys my observation of putting this on Jerry Reese. I mean, they've tried, to your point.
Well,
Between Pugh and Flowers, they have tried to bring in talent on that offensive line. And I don't know if it's the coaching. Speaking of coaching, by the way, Ben McAdoo's haircut, I mean, just world's better, right? He
so much
clearly
better.
got some professional advice.
One of the best upgrades of the offseason. Yeah.
That could be the Giants' best move of the offseason.
I was going to say their swagger for this year, which I don't know if that's quantifiable, but I'm making it quantifiable right now, has leapt up several notches. I don't know if we have a video or picture of that on the screen right now, but that hair, way better 2017 versus 2016.
Let's do this.
Hey everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030. This fly is now only on me. Bickler, if you don't kill this thing soon, I'm going to have to knock you out. This fly, it's and it knows exactly what it's doing.
I'm being told that the fly is not showing up on television. So
I don't care if it's not showing up on television. It's showing up and it's bugging me.
But I just want you to know that for a good portion of the audience, you look crazy.
I look crazy just kind of swatting at something that doesn't look like it's there.
Look at you here.
So I'm like swatting.
What are you waving away there?
That are watching on TV, there's a fly that's pestering me. It's pestering me.
Who would have put the odds that Will Kane sitting in for Mike Golick this morning? By the way, Mike Greenberg this morning. It's Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. The show is presented by Progressive Insurance. Who would have guessed on the day that I sit in for Greeny that I'm not the biggest pest on set? That I'm not the one.
That's true. Normally that seat is the biggest pest on set. Now it's this stinking fly. I can't wait till I get a hold of it.
All right. Joining us now on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. Is Charles Barkley, someone I'm very excited to have on the phone. Good morning, Chuck.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, Charles. So first off, a fly is just flying around my face, bugging me, and nobody seems to care. I feel like I should have people that are trying to get this fly off the set. If you had a fly flying around you on your set, would somebody help you out there, or just let that thing fly all over you?
Well, they probably just let it fly all over me. They probably would throw stuff at me to make more flies come to me on our set.
I guess that's pretty true.
I know what that feels like, Chuck. I know what that feels like. All right, I said this about 15 minutes ago, Charles, that you've stepped into this show this morning in the midst, and I know you've been talking in other places as well. I guess one of the most controversial times, not just in sports media, but in our country at large. And so we're having debates about whether or not athletes should be visiting the White House, whether or not athletes should be standing for the national anthem. So I don't want to ask this question too broad, and I don't want to ask it too narrow, but where do you stand on many of these issues right now? Should you be standing for the national anthem? Would you, Charles Barkley, be visiting the White House?
Well, I think, number one, I think you should visit the White House. It's the president. It's the office. It's not the person in there. I think if you go back and look, we've criticized guys in the past who didn't go. You can't have a double standard. I would go to the White House because it's the White House. It shouldn't be a Democrat or Republican thing. That's just my personal opinion. As far as the national anthem, I think that if you want to stand or kneel, that's up to the individual. But I think the media, which I'm part of, I think they've hijacked the story, and we spend all our time talking about who's standing, who's not standing, who's a good guy, who's a bad guy. You're dictated whether you're a good guy or a bad guy if you're not standing for the anthem. And we haven't solved one single issue. We don't even talk about the issues anymore. And that's the thing that probably disappoints me the most. I mean, when's the last time we ever talked about why these guys are actually kneeling or holding up their fists? We spend all our time like, who's doing it this? Okay, all the black guys doing it, and most of them are not. Oh, we need a white guy. Okay, now we got some white guys. And we spend all our time wasting energy and effort, and we haven't solved one single. We don't even talk about the issues anymore.
I completely agree about both topics. My thought on the White House is I would go. I respect the office of the White House, so I would go there. And if you don't want to go, then don't go. I could care less if you go or not. But I would go because it is the office of the White House. And that's what we started talking about yesterday. And I think you're right, is And it's a bad comparison, but I'll make it nonetheless to Deflategate with Tom Brady. Once that went to court, nobody even mentioned, under deflated balls on the football field anymore. It was all about the court. You completely lost sight of what the original sin supposedly was to what this battle was in Deflategate. And I feel the same way. We're losing sight of why the people were sitting or why they're kneeling. So how do we get that back? And we are getting more people being aware of it and making their stance or their kneel or their arm around a guy who has a fist up or whatever they're doing. How do we get back to, in your opinion, the actual statement that you're trying to make?
Well, I've told these guys for years, not just when this thing happened in the last year, we need, as black players, we need to go back in our community. We got some serious issues. Number one, the public school system, the greatest country in the world. We got the worst public school system in the country. We need to find a way to help these kids get educated, also get into college so they'll be in a more conducive learning environment. We've got to work out our relationship with the cops. We don't want young black men killed by the cops. But also, we got to take some personal responsibility to all the black-on-black crime that's going on in our own community. The cops come in there. When they make mistakes, we need to hold them accountable. But also, we got to understand, they come in there. They're nervous. They're hyper. They're going to make some mistakes. That doesn't excuse it, but we have to take some personal responsibility. And I've heard these other idiots out there, and I want to call them idiots because I want to make it clear I think they're idiots. I've heard them say, white people kill white people and Hispanic people kill Hispanic people because that's their neighborhood. I said, yeah, that's true, but they're not killing each other at the level we are in the black community. So I want them to know every time they use that argument, I think they're idiots. We as black people got to start having more respect for each other. We got to stop killing each other. And then I think last and definitely not least, we got to give black people economic opportunity. And also poor white people, because they're in the same boat as black people. Everybody want to make this thing always about black and white. It's really about economics, because poor white people are just in the same crappy boat as black people. And that's what we need to talk about and stop worrying about who's standing for the anthem and things like that.
Charles, I completely agree with you on the good guy versus bad guy thing. In fact, I think I probably lost my temper on First Take last Friday talking about just that. And to be completely honest, to some extent, I probably need to take some responsibility. Not for losing my temper, of course. I need to take responsibility for that. No, but who's sitting, who's standing? I've been hard on Colin Kaepernick. I don't like someone sitting for the national anthem, but I don't mean to turn it into good guy versus bad guy, because that's what I think we're getting entirely too much of. But one of the arguments that's been made back to me, Charles, is I've asked for specificity. You said, let's move to something that we can solve. Let's move to a productive conversation. And one of the things I've required, whether or not I've had conversations with Bomani Jones or Stephen A. Smith or whoever it is, let's have specifics then. I feel like from Kaepernick's talk of police brutality to Michael Bennett's talk of inequality to Malcolm Jenkins' talk of inequality and unity with Khalil Mack, it gets broad, it gets watered down, it gets all-encompassing, where we don't identify a specific thing like you just did when it comes to the public school system, that we can say, okay, that's why we're sitting, this is what we can solve. But I'm being told sometimes I'm being purposefully obtuse by continually asking for specifics. Am I, Charles?
Well, I think, number one, it bothers me when I've watched your show. It bothers me when guys try to make it where you're not down for the cause. You don't understand as a white person. First of all, let's get one thing straight. If you go back and look at history, even going back to Mississippi with the civil rights workers, that poor young white girl got killed in Charlottesville last week. White people have always been part of the civil rights movement, always. And I said, if you look at a lot of these protests around the country, there's a lot of white people there. So let's quit making this thing about black and white. I don't judge white people by all those fools down in Charlottesville who are neo-Nazis, who are carrying Confederate flags and things like that. And I don't, that bothers me. If you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. And we've had a private conversation. I think you're part of the solution. And I hate when people say, you hear it all the time, well, you don't know what it's like to be black. Well, I don't know what it's like to be black. I don't know what it's like to be white, but I can be sympathetic to other people's causes. And like I say, I don't know anything about the Holocaust but what I read through history, but I can be sympathetic when my Jewish friends talk about it. Same thing. People don't want to see young black men killed. I don't think you just have to be a human being to understand that. But it's not simple. It's not an A or a B answer. It's a lot of convoluted things going on. But until we talk about them with I call it a pure heart, where you don't have a hidden agenda, we're never going to solve these problems. They are problems, but we need to talk about them, not yell and scream, and until we do that, we're never going to go forward.
Charles, let's end on a basketball note on the court, or, well, kind of on the court. Magic Johnson, some comments, maybe something from Jimmy Kimmel or others talking about impermissible contact with Paul George. Do you see anything coming from this? Do you think this is something that may be too hard to prove, or do you see the Lakers possibly getting in trouble for this?
Well, Mike, I don't know what the NBA has, to be honest with you. I mean, you never know until you get before the judge and the jury what they have. I'd be very surprised if they had anything on Magic. Magic is going to be great for the Lakers. Listen, I don't think it's a secret. I think it's like one of the worst-kept secrets in the world that Paul George wants to go to the Lakers next summer. I hope he stays in Oklahoma City, just like I hope LeBron stays in Cleveland. At some point the fans are going to turn on the players. If at some point they're going to say, wait a minute, you guys don't have any loyalty toward our city, that to me is going to be the tipping point. At some point the fans are going to revolt. We don't mind you guys making $30, $40, $50 million, but y'all have zero loyalty to your city. Y'all just want to go and play on the super teams. That's going to be what's going to be interesting in the next 3 or 4 years in the NBA when the fans say, I've had enough. I'm not going to pay these outrageous ticket prices, and you guys got zero loyalty. Kyrie wants to leave Cleveland. He's played his entire career. I think at some point the fans are going to say, hey, listen, you guys got no loyalty. We're not going to have any loyalty.
All right. Yeah. Charles, we appreciate you getting up this morning. You're probably up. You're probably on the treadmill, right? What did we interrupt?
I will. Hey, I will say this. You two guys have the best hair or any duo in the history of broadcast television in a sports talk format.
You did. I didn't like how you narrowed it down as you went. You kept going from the history of broadcast television, and then you narrowed it down to a sports talk format.
To morning sports talk, to morning sports radio, to that whole deal. But we appreciate the compliment, Charles, man. Thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Chuck.
I pulled out we were looking at old pictures. I forgot why we had them out, but I saw a picture of old picture when I was at the Eagles, when Charles was in Philadelphia, and a young Mike Golick and a young Charles Barkley, along with like a young Reggie White, and man, it was good to be young. I saw that. I said, wow, to be young and athletic, it was really nice.
The best of Mike and Mike.
It's Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. Will Kane in for Greeny this morning. You can hop on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. I'm at Will Kane. Mike's at ESPN Golick. We just got off the phone with Charles Barkley on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and Charles, as he's always open to do, took on any subject.
Yes, he does.
Anything we wanted to talk about.
Yeah. He always does that.
You had mentioned at the end that one of your favorite moments was when you were playing in Philly and Charles was playing in Philly. You guys had a picture. So was that a one-time run-in?
No. I saw Charles. If Charles was there, he was there before I got to Philly, and he was there. I think our last years in Philly were the same year in '92, because in '93 I played for Miami, and I know he was there before I got to Philly in '87. He was there, I think, in '84 or something like that. We saw each other a few times. They had a big TV Christmas special that crossed over different athletes, and I know that was a place I saw him. That might have been the picture for all I know, but man, we were young and athletic, look at all of us at that point. It's amazing when you look at yourself and you're 20 some odd years old as opposed to 54 and over the hill. It's It was fun. But that was, back in the vet before they rightfully blew it up. We shared the bathroom and shower area with the Phillies, so that's where I got to know John Kruk and Dykstra and Darren Dalton and those guys from those Philly days.
Favorite guy to go hit the bars with in Philly.
Kruk was I think I met Kruk at a bowling charity event to which they served beer. So we, bonded over that.
When you would go out.
But he was fun. Charles was I always got along really, really well. I got a place in Arizona. He lives out there now. So occasionally we obviously comes on the show, but run into one another. But we've always gotten along really well. And it started way back when, like I said, we were athletes.
Okay, so when you're playing for the Eagles and you go out, you're a guy that, as you just described, you hit the bars every once in a while.
Every once in a while. I was married at that point and started having kids in '89. So it's not like I was a bar hopping type guy. But I
when
went
you
out.
did, and you walk into a bar and there's John Kruk on the other side of the bar, there's Charles Barkley. Do the professional athletes immediately go, "Hey, kindred spirit, let's go sit down with them"?
Oh, I mean, you definitely say hi. I mean, you definitely know one another.
Right.
Well, I knew them. I don't know how much they knew me. But, yeah, I mean, there is that you walk over, you say hi, whether you hang out with them or not. It depends. But, yeah, certainly, and we all did kind of know one another. There were not me, but there were a number of stars in the Philly sports scene when I was there. Coming in, Eric Lindros, the huge, big, time hockey, for the Flyers while I was there as well. So there were some big name stars of which I just kind of latched onto.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Joining us now in studio, giving us the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts, is ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter, who is on the phone up to the very last moment. A question is asked him. Is there breaking news we didn't know about?
Nope.
You got something?
Nothing urgent, nothing.
No?
No.
All right, well, then let me read you something.
Yes.
I would love to get your feedback on this. I'm going to read this. Apparently, this just came out. These excerpts were just released from a new book called Blitzed, Why NFL Teams Gamble on Starting Rookie Quarterbacks, scheduled to be published September 5th, 2017. Here we go. Former Rams coach Mike Martz asked if he believes new Rams head coach Sean McVay can make a difference for Goff. Here's your quote. What is he? A couple of months older than Jared? They hired a buddy for Jared. The NFL has nothing to do with being a friend or the buddy of the quarterback. You've got to coach them, work them hard with respect. But buddy? And this guy's a quarterback expert, an offensive expert? Wait a minute while I puke. Right. He's going to be able to teach and handle and guide Jared through tough times because of all of his expertise and knowledge. Right. I'm not going to be drinking that Kool-Aid. That is former Rams head coach Mike Martz on current Rams head coach Sean McVay. Adam Schefter, your thoughts?
Well, those are very strong comments, and the gentleman that wrote that book, Thomas George, is a longtime great friend of mine. He's a tremendous reporter, a great man, and he does an excellent job of connecting with people and getting them to share their thoughts. And I am a Mike Martz fan. Saying that, I think he's completely off base about Sean McVay. I don't think the Rams hired a buddy for Jared Goff. I think they hired somebody who is one of the brightest young offensive minds in the game. Somebody who's going to be a star, whether he succeeds in coaching or one day goes into broadcasting. And I think we've already begun to see Sean McVay's contributions in Jared Goff's first game out. Now, again, it's a long season. We'll see how it goes. But, again, that sounds to me like somebody who's grumpy more than it does somebody who's familiar with Sean McVay's work. They are incredible comments.
I agree. I mean, it sounds like who's somebody who is old school that says you have to be a grizzled veteran coach to be able to have some sort of effect on a player, which, I think is somewhat ridiculous. I mean, there are younger coaches who do great jobs. And I know McVay has not been head coach in the league long. He got in the league in 2008 as a Tampa Bay Buccaneers coaching assistant. and then worked his way to the last 3 years being the offensive coordinator for the Redskins. I mean, so I completely agree with you, Adam. I'm surprised by Mike Martz. I mean, just because a guy doesn't have a lot of years under his belt, all of a sudden he's just the buddy to a quarterback and can't coach somebody or doesn't have the experience. I mean, I don't understand that, and I don't buy it either. I think now we'll see. I don't know Sean McVay that well. I see what his product has been, but those on the inside think that he has a good head coaching future in front of him. We'll see. He may not. But just from Mike Martz's quotes, it just sounds to me like that old man on the porch saying, "Get off my lawn." You're too young to be coaching a quarterback on my lawn.
That's what it sounds like. Again, Thomas George is a tremendous writer, tremendous reporter, tremendous person. But Mike Martz here, and he had a great career, and he was a great coach in his day and age. But Sean McVay, to me, is one of the best, brightest young minds in the game. That's to me.
Well, to me, it doesn't sound like, with all due respect to you guys, it's just old school versus new school. I actually think it sounds personal. He didn't stop at buddy. He goes on to say something like, an offensive expert? This guy's a quarterback expert? Wait a minute while I puke. So, Adam, do you know of anything? Is there a personal relationship between these two guys that you know of that has gone awry somewhere? Because to me, I mean, this isn't just a grumpy old guy. This is a guy that has something out for Sean McVay.
Not that I'm aware of. I'd have to check into it, and I will check into it, but I don't know that there's anything personal between the two guys. It's hard for me to imagine that because Sean McVay was in Washington. Mike Martz was where he was at. He was out of football. My guess, and I could be wrong, I would guess that they don't know each other. Mike Martz has probably never met them.
I would agree. He's been in Washington since 2010 as an assistant tight ends coach, then moved to tight end coach, and then moved to offensive coordinator. So I'm with you. Now in the circles of
never see
the circles of coaching to former coaches that run, I don't know if they've run into one another. One thing we have seen, and we've seen decisions made because of it, are decisions to go with coaches that seem to have relationships with quarterbacks. McAdoo and Eli Manning, Dirk Cutter in Tampa Bay with Jameis Winston.
But there was nothing with Sean McVay.
No, I know.
Zero.
That's what I mean. So
and by the way,
where this is coming from.
Sean McVay comes in there. He talks about them being buddies. Sean McVay comes in there basically not knowing Jared Goff and wanting to see whether or not Jared Goff can play in his offense at this level because he doesn't know. He has no idea whether Jared Goff can play. We don't know. If you watched Jared Goff last year, despite the fact that he went number one, you don't know whether he can play in this league or not. There are questions. Sean McVay has to have those exact same questions when he comes in there. There's no prior relationship between McVay and Goff.
I agree.
The Rams hired Sean McVay because he was the best man for that job. He had zero relationship with Jared Goff. He didn't know Jared Goff. So that's off base right there.
Which just leads you back to why would Martz do this?
I don't get now. Again, we see the excerpt. So, and again, what do you throw out in an excerpt that causes a stir to do? So someone buys the book. It's like that headline.
Well, it's
to read the story. So I wonder if there's more once you get the book. And this is supposed to grab you and bring you in, and then maybe there's more. I don't know, but man, this stuff just sounds nonsensical to me. I don't know.
Let's move on to some of these other quarterback issues around the league. First of all, so Trevor Siemian's been named the starter for the Denver Broncos over Paxton Lynch. We've pointed out several times this morning. Field Yates tweeted this last night.
Yeah.
Only 4 quarterbacks since 2006 drafted in the first round weren't starting by their second year. What are you hearing out of Denver? Is Paxton Lynch a bust?
No, let me say this to you, that this was never a competition. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. Trevor Siemian, if you speak to the people in that organization, basically outplayed him in almost every practice. It was never close. And 2 years in a row, they've given other quarterbacks the chance to win this job. And 2 years in a row, Trevor Siemian, the 7th-round draft pick, the guy that came in with an unheralded background, has proven that he has what it takes to win that job. He's got the intangibles. Paxton Lynch is still learning that. He has the knowledge, the experience. Paxton Lynch is still learning that. Paxton Lynch has got that ability, and maybe one day it will come out. Maybe it won't. But he is a big-time project, and it's going to take time. And, again, everyone goes at different lengths and different timelines. His timeline looks like it's going to be slower, and he may never get it. He may never be the quarterback that people thought. But it's amazing how these things work out because, again, you go back to that draft where Denver did trade up to get him and leapfrog basically in front of Dallas.
Yep.
Dallas wanted to trade up to get him. Dallas wanted Paxton Lynch, didn't get him. Dallas then tried to trade up in the 4th round to get Connor Cook, didn't get him. And then Dallas had to settle after not getting Lynch, after not getting Cook. They had to settle for Dak Prescott. That worked out okay.
Worked out okay, yeah. I had my questions about Lynch, seeing him play in college, coming in NFL. I still do. I don't think it's going to work. But on the glass half full, give the props to Trevor Siemian for 2 years in a row winning a quarterback battle and being the starting quarterback.
Yep.
I want to go to guys I know we're going to keep you here 2 segments, but Le'Veon Bell this week, next week, we pretty much believe he's going to be back before the regular season. And then
he will be.
After that, Aaron Donald, which it's a different situation. He is actually under contract right now where Le'Veon Bell can only play for $12.1 million. What's the difference with those two and where they are?
Well, again, Le'Veon Bell has not signed his franchise tender, not obligated to be there, not fined $40,000 a day for every day that he misses like Aaron Donald. Le'Veon Bell is going to show up at some point in the next week. At some point he will be there because he wants to give himself enough time to get ready for the regular season opener against the Cleveland Browns and his contract year, because he's on the last year of his contract here, this 1-year deal for the franchise tag. And so he's been exercising, staying in shape in Florida, getting ready for the season. Again, I don't know that it's football shape. He hasn't gone through camp, but I guarantee he knows the significance and importance of being in shape, and he's doing that. Now, the concern and question you have with a guy like Le'Veon Bell is that he comes in and he tweaks a quad, a hamstring, a calf, some sort of muscle strain, which is always the risk that you run by staying out of camp. But, again, he's doing what he believes has to be best for his future. Aaron Donald, that one's a tricky one because I could give you both schools of thought, and they're both correct. Aaron Donald is arguably the best defensive player in football and should be paid like it. The Rams would say he's got this year on his contract. Next year, the 5th-year option, they could franchise him for 1 year, 2 years. So they really control his rights for the next 4 years if they want. And he's not in camp. So by him holding out, if you reward that guy while he's not there, what message are you sending to the other players when they prove? But he's not going to come in. Look, they had a big offer on the table to him before camp, and he didn't take it. And now
the agent was denying that it was as big as people say. Was it a big, legitimate, big-time offer?
My understanding, it was a big, legitimate offer. Depends what you would classify as a big, legitimate offer. The Rams would say it is. The agent would say it's not.
Right.
It is. To me, it is. It's a big, legitimate offer. And so now they're in nowhere land, and Aaron Donald's going to miss the start of the regular season. He's going to miss multiple games into the season, and I think there's every chance that he misses about a half a season before he winds up reporting.
Game, right?
The 8th game.
The 8th game.
He has to be in by the 8th game for the contract not to toll.
Right.
So I think there's a realistic chance. That's the best way of saying it, because these things change quickly.
Right.
There's a realistic chance that Aaron Donald could miss the first half of the season before he reports.
The best of Mike and Mike.
It's Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. Will Kane sitting in for Greeny today. Adam Schefter in studio with us right now. We're reading these quotes. It's just stunning quotes from former Rams head coach Mike Martz on current Rams coach Sean McVay. They read like this, questioning McVay's hiring. What is he, a couple of months older than Jared?
Jared Goff, the quarterback there.
They hired a buddy for Jared. The NFL has nothing to do with being a friend or a buddy of the quarterback. You've got to coach them and work them hard with respect. But buddy, and this guy's a quarterback expert, an offensive expert? Wait a minute while I puke.
Wow.
Right. He's going to be able to teach and handle and guide Jared through tough times because of all his expertise and knowledge? Right. I'm not going to drink that Kool-Aid. I don't like it, Shefty. I don't like it, Golic, when we constantly question someone's motivations. I'm going to be honest with you. It happens to me all the time.
Right.
First take, I have a point. The point stands on its own, and people act like, what's that say about you? Where's that coming from? Let's attack the speaker, not the message. But yet here we are, and I just indulged in it. Why would Martz do this?
My guess is that he has some resentment to the Rams for letting him go. And I've been texting with Thomas George. I asked him a little bit more about it, and his opinion is that basically there are other veteran coaches that feel this way about Sean McVay, and I would say that's fine. You know,
he said that there are.
He believes there are, and again, I would say I would want to know how many of those veteran coaches have been around Sean McVay, because again, I know Mike Shanahan in Washington around Sean McVay. I know Mike thinks the world of Sean McVay. So if you've been around him and see how he operates and see how he runs an offense and handles a court. Ask Kirk Cousins what he thinks of Sean McVay. The people who know him there were very impressed. And ask the teams that interviewed him what they thought. Like the Rams met him, and they met him just to go through the motion, like he was on their list, 31-year-old guy, let's go take a look because we're curious. And they walked out of that meeting and were like, wow. Like, we got to go hire this guy. And so, we bring up the young coaches. There were people, when Adam Gase was interviewing, teams that thought, okay, well, this is an intriguing young coach, but he's young. Mm-hmm. And so you hear this sometimes, he needs a couple more years of seasoning. Well, if you like the guy and believe in the guy and he's a bright offensive mind or a bright mind, hire him and let him grow on the job and let him learn on the job. And that's what the Rams did with Sean McVay.
Yeah, I agree, especially you have a young quarterback. You're trying to kind of reinvent that team. It's been stagnant for a while, and you're not expecting them to be world beaters this year, so let everybody grow together. I'm really somewhat amazed at the attacking of that one to really get after him the way he did. So that
absolutely. Look, in the end, you can say it's because it's old school versus new school. Older coaches don't like younger coaches. It could be personal towards the Rams with Mike Martz. It could be personal.
That to me is the biggest one.
But you know what? We can't ignore this. I think you're doing a great job, Shefty, of presenting the other side of Sean McVay. I think it needs to be said as well regarding Mike Martz. He could actually just mean this. He could actually be this passionate about this statement, to actually have no ulterior motive.
Right.
And you are pointing out there might be other coaches who feel this way as well about not just Sean McVay, but some of these younger coaches. I teased this. I wanted to ask you this. Herm Edwards told me yesterday, we talk all this about Mahomes and Goff. We talk about all these young quarterbacks. He said, have we all noticed here that Cam Newton hasn't been on the field yet, that Andrew Luck hasn't been on the field yet? And at some point, some real red flags have to go up, and these teams need to be nervous about the fact these guys aren't on the field.
Look, we're in the third week of the preseason here, and Cam Newton, I think, is going to play this week. So that should satisfy some questions and concerns about Cam Newton and his shoulder. He came back. I think he had a little bit of a setback. They've held him out. They rested him up. They're going to have him out there for the third week of the preseason. Andrew Luck, however, still not practicing, still on PUP, and I think the Colts are being overly cautious because he's been so abused the last couple of years and has gotten so beaten up. But the fact remains, they have to be preparing to play their opener against the Rams without Andrew Luck, and there's a real chance that they'll be playing a few games to open the season without Andrew Luck. Now, again, they're hoping he can come back. They haven't given up hope that he could come back. They're still holding out hope, but I think it's looking increasingly unlikely that he's going to be ready for the opener, and maybe he can miss the first 2-3 weeks of the season.
And to me, there is zero reason to rush this. He's got,
and they're missing their starting center, Ryan Kelly, for 8 weeks, too.
So
So